Chapter 7, Independence. If money is your hope for independence, you will never have it. The only real security that a man will have in this world is a reserve of knowledge, experience, and ability. Henry Ford. As mere children in God's eyes, it is our job to grow up to be conscious, self-governing, spiritual adults. As with most children, there comes a time when the parent must stand aside and let the child take their first flight. Independence comes from building self-confidence, knowledge, wisdom, and experience. Sure, it is a painful process to watch. As a parent myself, I found that there is a fine line between helping too much and not helping enough. It was all the skinned knees, cuts, and scrapes that taught many lessons with all the laughter, fun, and joy. The balance required to raise a child is immense and extremely rewarding. I'm very proud of my two boys and all that they have accomplished so far in their lives. They are so much wiser than I was at their age. This generation seems to have something extra that I've not seen in my own youth. For me, though, the hardest part is letting go and letting them live their own lives rather than what I think their lives should be like. I struggle with that even to this day. I must find it within myself to trust that I've done all I can, and it's now up to them to make the best of what they've learned so far. We worked very hard to teach them how to think and learn rather than what to think and learn. I trust that those skills will serve them well as they start to explore the greater world around them. I know that they have all the skills they need to make their way through the world. It's all up to them now. We decided to homeschool our kids when they hit grades 4 and 6. We found that the public school system did not reflect the values and beliefs we hold, and that the boys' spirit was being crushed by rules, policies, procedures, and a level of expectations that everyone must conform to the standard. My boys would literally cry each morning because they did not like school. Narrators aside, so did I. My entire childhood was completely destroyed by this compelled abuse that I was sent to this facility every day to just be abused all day, every day, and it was just horrific. And so one of the biggest obstacles I have is this mountain of resentment that I have towards everybody that's involved with the state on any level, because I feel that my childhood was stolen and destroyed by stupid people who just really need to mind their own business. Anyway, White Walking Feather did better, see? As we go back to the text. So we pulled them out and found a fantastic homeschooling school board to help us. Their first recommendation: do no schooling for at least 6 months. We were a bit shocked, but given the benefit of hindsight, we were very glad. The reason was that it would take at least that long to deprogram our boys. There is so much programming and behavior modification taking place in our schools today that I was forced to conclude that our schools are no longer there for higher learning, but rather slave training. Absolutely. Our kids are taught how to follow instructions, obey authority. It's not even authority, narrators aside, to obey violence because they don't have authority. Back to the text. And learn the skills necessary to run the machine. Our kids are not given an education, but rather are taught instruction. Life is how we get a real education. Part of our purpose for leaving the city, building earth ships, chicken coops, raising livestock, etc., was to remove our dependencies from the corporate grid. But it also gave us an opportunity to give our boys a wider range and scope of skills and experiences. My boys know how to build a house and do what it takes to provide for themselves. They also recognize that the important things in life take a lot of work and time. Sure, they succumb to a few bouts of instant gratification, but for the most part, they've done extremely well in this regard. I know for a fact that when they're ready, they will have the skills to provide all the basic necessities of life directly. They know how to grow food, look after livestock, build houses, harvest water, treat waste, heat their homes, and all that is necessary to provide for their families. The level of skills necessary to accomplish all of that is staggering. The learning curve that my wife and I went through just to establish our domain was immense. About a year ago, I came to a very comforting realization that should anything happen, I have what it takes to redo all of this if necessary. That knowledge and experience cannot be taken away from me, except perhaps with a bullet. But I'm not going to worry about that. Our relationship with the state prior to all of these changes can be compared to that between a child and a parent. The only difference is that the state has absolutely no interest in teaching its children how to become independent. It's not in their best interest, as that would severely impact their ability to harvest energy from the people. I found over the last few years that people are now starting to feel the pinch and are starting to protest. I found that protesting is a very important stage in the growth development of people. Protesting can be equated to the teenager rebelling against the parent. It is an important step to realize, and a healthy one too. The teenagers out there who are protesting are at a critical stage, and should they be aware that their protesting may change a few people's behaviors, but it does not change the foundational structures of the parent. Once they realize that, then they will either succumb to the authority of the parent or venture off on their own and do it themselves. I pray that the protesting people realize the choices they face, and they choose to pick up the duty to govern themselves in order to grow up to be responsible, accountable adults, instead of giving up and going back to being children. Those who hide behind the mask of the state have used subtle tricks to keep us enslaved to their system. They've gone to great lengths to convince us that we are persons, masks, rather than physical and spiritual beings. They've torn the essence of who we are into pieces so that they can gain jurisdiction over one part while ignoring the others or the whole. They hope that we don't figure this out. Should we figure it out, we will then realize that we are not a fiction at all, but much more than that. Religion is designed to keep us from pushing through that next barrier by convincing us that we are sinful and that we must pay for any redemption. The whole goal is to keep us from contemplating that we are indeed divine in nature once we realize that we were indeed created in the image of God and our spirit is that which is divine. The fact that we have merged it with a human body does not diminish who we are, but rather speaks to the courage and dedication involved in taking on such a challenging task in order to learn and grow. It is a lot of hard work for a divine spirit to join with a human body that has so many challenges to overcome. But we do it because there's a great spiritual meaning behind doing all that work. As children, I believe it's time to take the risk, fly the coop, and venture out on a journey of maturity. What makes this particularly challenging is that the parents, those in government and corporations, don't want us to do that. Having billions of people learning how to look after themselves and others would completely destroy the fictional empires that they've spent so long building. People, though, are so conditioned to fear authority and follow the commands of authority that the biggest challenge is not the authority, but their own perceptions and feelings when it comes to authority. I've been on this path for many years, and I still go through a bit of a panic attack when I see a police car. Why is that? Are we so afraid of going to jail or getting into trouble that we literally have a panic attack just at the sight of a mere symbol? Narrators aside, yeah, I literally have panic attacks just at the sight of this mere symbol. But the reason for that is that I have been trained to know that immediately after seeing this symbol, injuries and harm come to me. This particular symbol, this police light thing, is not anything that has ever done me any good. It's only something that has harmed me, and greatly. So just, on the basic programming level, that's really difficult to overcome after a lifetime of repetitive, unprovoked violence. Back to the text. I'm reminded of my boys when they're about 2 years old. They loved saying no. I recently learned that during that period of time in their development, they were starting to explore their individuality. For a 2-year-old child, because they're not emotionally or mentally mature, this period of time can seem a bit self-destructive. As a parent, it was my job to ensure that they don't get into trouble and end up hurting themselves. I will admit that my approach was to assert my force over them, mainly because I was much bigger and stronger, very much the same way the current state controls its children. As a result, the word no was suppressed, and the will of the child to explore his individuality was suppressed. Narrators aside, I have to apologize and express my remorse because I did the same thing. When I first had my young babies, I didn't know anything. I just had been trained by the state and the church, and I knew nothing about spiritual matters, about, the structure of this, the self and all that. And I didn't respond the way that I would now back then when my kids were small. So I hope that my offspring, my babies, I hope they realize that I very deeply feel regret for that. And that's part of why I'm making this audiobook. And whatever else I do as far as putting together educational material, it's motivated by my love for my kids and I shouldn't even call them kids. It's a terrible thing to call them, but my babies and my offspring. I would love to have a chance to do it over. But anyway, back to the text. I believe most of us went through this same process when we grew up as well. So now we were taught from our parents that there is no use in opposing authority because they are always bigger and stronger than we are. So there's no sense in even trying. This was true when we were 2 years old, but this assumption is completely false when we are older. The truth of the matter is that when we get to a point where we have the mental and emotional maturity to assert our individuality, most of us refuse to take that step. We as full-grown, mature adults have what it takes, and all we need now is that same desire and determination that we had when we were 2 years old. Matthew 18:3 states, "Except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven." Oh, that's some harsh words. "Except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven." For me, what this passage is saying is that we need to get back in touch with our youth, our desire to learn, explore, and share. We had no bias or discrimination. What is required now is the burning desire to express our individuality, stand up and say no. We have it within ourselves to govern the self. We currently lack the skills to accomplish this, but as spiritual children, it is time that we as a people venture out and learn how this is going to be done. My wife and I have done that here since 2007. We made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I believe we are getting better and better at accomplishing the end result: self-sufficiency and self-governance. We have had a lot of help from our close friends and family. The community of people that have stepped up and provided assistance through our journey has been absolutely humbling. Without that guidance, support, and assistance, I don't think we would have accomplished all that we have. I hear lots of people talking about communes, communities, etc., but I think for us, we found some valuable lessons when we considered these types of relationships. We came out here and tried working and living with 2 other families at different times. Experience has taught us that if those families are not already independent, then there is a strong tendency to fall back into a dependent relationship with those who are fully dedicated to being independent. That had a huge strain on the relationship, and it ended up not working out. So I now tell people that if they want to participate within our community, then get out there, find some land, build, and become as independent as possible. Then we can start building independent relationships, interdependent relationships that will last the test of time, or at least stand a way better chance of surviving. I'd be more than happy to help out, but not at the expense of those individuals learning through the experience. It's the struggle and experiences that teach the most, and I don't want to rob them of that. However, it is also in my best interest to ensure that they are successful as well. So I will do what I can to ensure success. I have a very close group of people around me. Very good friends who believe in what we do, and some of them are well into the process of becoming independent themselves. I call this group my clan because that is how important they are to me. They don't live near me. In fact, most of them live 1 to 2 hours away. It's not the distance that created the community. It is the relationships and the time we spend together that created that community. I also have a much larger group of people who are watching what we do very closely. They've donated building materials and labor to help us get things built, like the Earthship and the greenhouse. Given our limited cash flow, these people have been instrumental in the progress we have made as well. They've also demonstrated the prosperity model that we can experience if we see past the scarcity of commodities. I raise all these points because the last few years of work to become truly independent from the corporate and government grids has been very much like what I experienced when I first moved away from home when I was 18 years old. I had very little to live on, so parents, family, friends, etc., all provided a little bit to get me started. It was then completely up to me to make it all work and figure it all out. If I fell down, there were people there to help me, but for the most part, I wanted to do it myself. It was a rite of passage for me. It was important that I make it work. Our experiences on our domain over the last few years is the most important step we could make to truly be independent and free. It may seem like 10 steps backward for most of us as we have rejected many luxuries, and it appears we've lowered our standard of living by considerable amounts. But for us, we value all that we have accomplished and proven to ourselves that we can do this without the state or most corporations. The knowledge we have learned doing this cannot be learned through books or videos, but only through action, getting dirty and doing the work. To do this completely by ourselves would have been 100 times more difficult, but with our community, clan, and family, we proved that this is not only possible, but also extremely rewarding at the same time. These struggles have built strength, determination, faith, and confidence, all the qualities that I hope we instilled in our two boys. These are areas of self-development that I find are completely devoid in the fictional realm's education system. To sell everything and venture out into the countryside to accomplish this took an absolute leap of faith and a level of willingness to take risks because of the valuable learning that would come from it. I have lost count of how many people come out to visit us, see the Earthship and all that we build, and comment on how great it all looks and feels. They then admit to themselves that they could not do what we have done. The main reason is that they are unwilling to let go of the benefits or privileges they currently enjoy within the system, and they admit that it's okay for them. In order to make the shifts necessary, we must be willing to let go of these benefits so that we can rebuild a new paradigm that is built on completely different constructs. Teenagers exhibit this quality beautifully, as they usually have a strong desire to move away from home, to do things differently, and to explore their independence. They take that leap all in an attempt to improve upon what they learned from their parents. If we were to learn from our teenagers, we would be faced with the truth that if we are unhappy with our current situation, then what is required is a large shift in how we view and interact with others in this world. We cannot continue to interact with one another using antiquated systems that were designed for control and power. The human race is growing up and outgrowing the strict confines of the parent that governed the earth for thousands of years. The teenagers are ready to break free for the first time in human history and explore what it is going to be like to live as independent, sovereign beings. Narrators aside, I really don't feel like it's the first time in human history. There's been a few examples like Abraham, and Noah and the Israelites when they left Egypt. All these are models in the Bible of what we're experiencing now. Anyway, back to the text. What will those relationships look like? How will this work? How will we interact with one another? Those questions I cannot answer and will not even attempt to answer. I have faith that when we work through the transition period, which will be very chaotic for some, scary for others, we will end up on the side of peace, and what we create on the other side will be more beautiful and peaceful than any of us can imagine. It will be the combined creative capacity of all that survived the transition, and it will rival anything ever created on this earth or in the universe. We all know what it's going to take, as we have all been through it before on a much smaller level. We all experienced it on a personal level when we grew up and moved away from home. The only difference is that instead of running into the arms of yet another parent, we have an opportunity to break the cycle and stand in our own power, authority, and governance as true adults with the capacity to control and manage the power from within. The creative power that God has given each and every one of us. What will be required to accomplish this goal is the drive and tenacity of a 2-year-old to stand up and say no, no matter the consequences, to explore and question everything, drive the corporate parent nuts by asking why over and over, not yielding until we are satisfied our thirst for curiosity has been quenched. We now have the mental and emotional maturity to do this without destroying ourselves. If we can find the same courage and drive that we had as teenagers, then we too can venture out and leave the government and corporate parents behind in order to explore our capacity to live on our own and figure out what we are capable of accomplishing. We can explore our relationship with ourselves and all those around us. The experience will be challenging, and at times we may have little food on the table. Learning how to be fully independent is one of the most challenging experiences we will face in our lifetime. Our fictional parents will pout and pull all kinds of temper tantrums. They will do anything to try to sabotage our efforts for independence. They are bullies and very abusive. They no longer deserve our loyalty or cooperation. It is time to walk away and be all that we were meant to be. Free, prosperous, loving, compassionate, peaceful, individual, independent, spiritual beings. Then and only then will we be able to form interdependent relationships and build a social structure where we work together for the prosperity of all through the spirit of cooperation.